Hey,
Us together, Chad. I'm thinking it's October 3rd,
it's fine.
but I'm not positive.
All right, everyone, let's go ahead and get started for tonight's meeting. Good on stream. All right, so streaming's going. Thanks everyone for making it here. I'm sorry for the bit of a delay to get started, but this is the Ulster County Racehorse Recovery Agency Zero Waste Committee meeting. This August 20th, 5 p.m. or it's 5 p.m. 5:10 p.m. now. We will start with the roll call. So Chris Robert, myself, I'm here. Donna Egan, not here, but she should be joining the stream shortly. Erica Brown said she will not be making it. Claudia Joseph.
Present.
Anna Jo Green.
Present.
Rebecca Martin.
Present.
Shabazz Jackson.
Here.
Chris Hewitt.
Here.
And Alexandria Wojcik.
She's trying to go potentially remote.
Oh, all right, cool. So we'll see if she joins. And then agency staff, Mark
Here.
and Angelina. She's not here, right? Right. Yeah. This is here. Tim's on vacation. Nancy
Here.
and Kevin. Yeah. Amazing. All right, everyone. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
All right. Is there anybody here that would like to make a public comment?
What did you say?
Anyone just? Sure. So next on the agenda is the approval of, so I will, we submitted the agenda to you all. So I just would like to make a motion or to approve the agenda. If anybody would like to make that motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the agenda.
All right. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you very much. So the agenda will move forward as planned. The next section on the approval of minutes. So we realized that we didn't share the minutes with everyone. So I will make a motion to amend this agenda so that we review the minutes in the next meeting. I'll make sure to share them beforehand as well as the minutes of this meeting so we can approve both sets of minutes in the next meeting. So I will make a motion to amend the agenda so that we do not review the minutes now, but we review it next meeting. All right. Thank you. I think I did that. Next section, communications and announcements. So the next Zero Waste Committee meeting will be held on September 10th, 2026 at 5 p.m. Next section is on updates. So I'm just going to give just a very quick update. I sent everyone on the committee an email about this, but just to make the public aware also. So when we had initially set out with this committee, we were going to do a meeting every 3 months. But after a lot of very good feedback from other committee members, we decided we wanted to move to the monthly schedule. And so we will be meeting on September 10th, October 15th, November 12th, and December 10th. So that will be our meeting cadence. From a work plan perspective, the idea is still the same. We're here to create the preliminary zero waste implementation plan, which will be a collection of initiative cards, which we'll review tonight. We'll be getting that. And we use the meeting in September, October, and November to really continue refining and discussing these cards so that when we get to the November meeting, we have a very strong prioritized list of what we really want to submit. So that when we go into December, we can have a final review of those cards and give them to the upper board for our recommendations as this. So with that, that's really the only updates I wanted to make. The next section is a presentation. So Rebecca gave us the great idea to lead with the goals. We should be making sure that all the initiatives that we're pulling forward are helping advance the goals of the agency. And so Mark has prepared a short presentation to talk about both the goals for the Ulster County Planning Unit, as well as for the waste stream managed by the agency. So Mark, I will hand it over to you to walk the committee through and review sets of goals.
Sure.
Just
Thanks.
prefacing this up front that this is some sets of targets and a lot of the work that will be getting us to the end targets has yet to be done. A lot of the work that's done in this committee will get us initiatives to put into the local solid waste management plan, which will cover from 2030 to 2040 and then beyond. So
Keeps jumping to the line.
I know, I don't know. And it's not letting her. Okay, anyway. Oh, there's. All right, so this is our mission statement: protect public health and the environment, promote sustainable materials management practices in Ulster County by efficiently managing solid waste materials with a focus on resource conservation. And Alex or Donna, if you can hear me, just like give me a thumbs up. Okay.
Yep.
Perfect. So our vision statement: waste generation minimized at the source, reuse, recycling, composting are prioritized to keep materials in circulation. Human health and ecosystems are protected. Resource consumption is balanced with the planet's capacity. Materials that cannot be managed any other way are discarded responsibly. Yeah.
How did the vision statement, was it a board process or just?
It was a process of planning with staff that has been put forth to the board in.
Okay, thank you.
So the targets for this are 30, 60, 90 by 30, 40, 50. So diverting 30% of our waste by 2030, 60% by 2040, and 90% by 2050. We are mostly at the 2030. We're a little over it, depending on whether you're talking the planning unit or the operations of the agency. However, a lot of the information and data that we have, we believe is unreliable. And so we are working in the next couple of years to get that data in a better place. So I just discussed planning unit versus operations. So as the local solid waste planning unit, we are responsible for planning the system for all of waste generated in Ulster County. The targets of 30, 60, 90 look different as the planning unit than it is for waste received by the agency. Waste received by the agency is often the most difficult to divert. This is one of the reasons why this committee was created. The agency will consider recommendations created here, and the board may vote to have them implemented into the next solid waste management plan, which will get us to 2040, the 10-year plan. So roles and responsibilities, solid waste in Ulster County. You have the county and local government. They create local laws and policies. They're partners in planning, implementation, and enforcement. And then obviously we have a contract with them, so contract terms and conditions. There's generators. We need them to rethink production and consumption. And a generator could be a manufacturer and it could be a resident. So a generator, there's large and small generators. Reduce waste generated at the that's generated. Source separate for reuse, recycling, and composting, and comply with solid waste laws. State agencies, they create laws and policies, statewide solid waste planning, permitting of solid waste facilities, technical regulatory enforcement and assistance, and fiscal oversight. So that's the ABO, Authorities Budget Office, which they audit us. That's the DEC. And other state agencies. And then the UCRRA, local solid waste planning, hauling, receiving, and handling incoming waste and recycling, transportation, disposal, diversion, and resource recovery, education, compliance, and enforcement. This is just the waste flows in Ulster County. So on the left, what's generated by material. So, and the next column is what's received by UCRRA. So when you see MSW, 105,641 generated, that's 36% of all waste. 98.9, because the flow control comes to the agency. Construction demolition debris, 104,000 tons. That's about another third. 1/3 of that comes to the agency because there is no flow control. Regulated recyclable is 9.7% of the total makeup. 28,000 tons generated here, we receive 15%. Again, not flow control. Source separated organics is another 18,000 tons. That includes yard waste, that includes food waste. 41% of that comes to the agency. Biosolids is another 3,500 tons, which makes up 1.2% of the overall waste. 92% of that comes to the agency and then is sent down to Rockland County and composted and used as a soil additive. And then other materials, scrap metal, miscellaneous, hazardous waste, other 6.3% goes to the agency. So as a planning unit, when we look at targets from this perspective, it's important to note that many of the planned actions take place outside of agency control. We're talking about generators needing to reduce their waste consumption. Ulster County, New York, or the federal government may need to pass laws that regulate generation or diversion of certain materials. New companies, organizations will need to be created to help process some of the waste not handled by the agency, and getting to 90% reduction will require fundamental changes in residents' behavior. Agency operations is where we have more control, but the solutions are not necessarily easy. Funding becomes a barrier for diversion before the scale. So everything that goes into our agency comes across the scale. About $40 of every ton of the tipping fee goes to administrative costs, our recycling outreach team, keeping the lights on. And then $104 of that goes directly to transportation and disposal costs. And that's where we have a hard time competing, where there's no flow control with like the Lamella transfer station or the waste management transfer station for C&D, because they're not responsible to be a planning unit. They're not responsible to have a recycling outreach team. And so the additional costs that we have to have in the tipping fee, or that choose to have, we don't want to charge people for recycling. Those expenses have to come from the tipping fee. In our current system, we're working on ways to change that system, hopefully with county support. I say there's a limit on how high the tipping fee can go before we lose volume, and that volume isn't always going to locations that focus as much on diversion. We've seen that this year. So part of our budget for 2027 is we're reducing the volume we're expecting or projecting by another 5,000 tons, because over the last 2 years, we've seen decreases in our volume, and that's tied into partially, at least, the fact that one transfer station charges $130. It's not that much further to get to. You know, we charge $150, and with non-flow control materials, they choose to go other places. Much of the planning related to these targets, the 30, 60, 90 in our operations, is in the 5-year capital project plan. See you in just a minute. So this was capital project plan passed in 2025. It'll be updated this year. The first project was a mattress recycling area. This is complete. And we will begin recycling mattresses again. We have a contamination training with the company that we're working with next Friday, and then we will start recycling mattresses. Secondary diversion building is slated for the next 2 years, 27 and 28. That is where materials that we receive that go across the scale and that we receive revenue for C&D and bulky items will go into a different building than the MSW, the general MSW, and we will have more time to sort through it and divert it away from the landfill.
That considered deconstruction, or it's not?
That is not actually deconstruction. I mean, because the deconstruction has to happen at a building level, right? As soon as you get the wrecking ball or the cranes that go in there and just smash everything up, the reuse of those items is very limited, but there is some that we will be able to pull out. Whatever is divertible will go to our tipping floor. Everything else will go to the Reuse Innovation Center or other places where it's appropriate to divert. Yeah.
We had also discussed that when there's a system, that we would try to get the legislature to pass legislation, requiring a plan so that if there's good reason why you can't do deconstruction, then you could be waived, but that the first priority would be to plan for deconstruction. And I just want to keep that in the conversation because, you know, there are good examples around the country where that's being done.
Yeah, and as soon as we have the buildings and everything up and ready, we're in communication with the legislature to do some kind of deconstruction ordinance, whether it's requiring a deconstruction audit prior to demo, and then having somebody go in like you do with asbestos and take everything that can be reused out. Also on the generator, like the manufacturing and buildings in the built environment that can be deconstructed, right? There's no reason, like the technology is out there. You can build buildings in a way that it's easy to take them apart and they're still structurally sound. The Reuse Innovation Center, we anticipate we'll be able to divert 5% of the overall MSW stream to that facility once that's up and running. Compost expansion, so hub and spokes. I think this is similar to what Shabazz has brought up with using the town MRDCs as collection and or processing capabilities. We've applied for a grant each of the last 2 years to do that. We applied as well this year with the Climate Smart Communities. Finding funding to do it. I mean, we put 1.7. That's what it would cost the agency as a match. We believe it is like closer to $3-4 million. We just applied for a $3 million grant, which would mean we would match it $1.5 million, and they would give us $1.5. The new on-site MRDC here. So that would be, we get a lot of residents that come here and they come in trucks. They have to be in an SUV or larger, or else they come in on Saturdays. Saturdays, people can drive regular sedans and use the facility. During the week, they have to be in at least an SUV. It's still not ideal to have them in the same area that your flow control haulers and the larger vehicles are. So we are building a municipal recycling drop center, which will collect residential waste, construction, demolition debris. It'll also give us an opportunity to have full-time e-waste collection for recycling and full-time hazardous household waste.
A little bit like Newburgh has that kind of breakdown where the residents go to their one spot and everybody else goes the other way. It's much safer. You're right.
Would that mean 20 MRDCs in the county, and would UCRRA run that MRDC, or
We would run,
in town of Ulster wouldn't help with it?
it would be on our property. Whether the town of Ulster would still decide to have theirs, that's the decision for the town. So this is a little bit deeper dive on this. This is already up and running, so I'm gonna just kind of go through it. The reuse pathway for zero waste and economic resilience. It builds on a plan that the Ulster County Legislature had Sustainable Hudson Valley do in 2023, which was the Reuse Innovation Center feasibility study. Project uses hub and spoke model to facilitate collection and distribution of reusable goods and materials. The idea there is that we will establish Tioli sheds at all of the town municipal recycling drop centers, take it or leave it, for those that don't know the Tioli acronym. And then the ideal situation, let's say we're talking about town of Esopus, for instance, if a town of Esopus resident brings an item that can be reused and donated and not end up in their containers and puts it in the shed, ideally, a town of Esopus resident comes and takes it. However, that's not always how they work. So we have the hub will have a large warehouse where items after 30 or 60 days that sit in the Tealy sheds will go to the centralized warehouse that will feed into a larger customer base. They will also have an online presence. And so people who may not know that the Esopus Tealy shed has an item will be able to go online and see that. And that's we're still waiting on a site. It's been very, very difficult to find a site. And it's been difficult to find funding, honestly, but this is where we did an RFP and chose Big Reuse out of Brooklyn, who does do these type of stores. In the meantime, before we find a site, we are working with some early adopter towns who want Tealy sheds as standalone reuse pathways without a hub. So by the end of this year, we'll probably roll 2 or 3 of those sheds out. Next year, we'll roll a few more out, even if we don't get the hub up and running. Compost expansion is the same idea of the Tealy sheds, but it's collection at town transfer stations. It's also collection at about 90 total community sites. Similar to what phase 1 of Kingston Organics was, which is voluntary drop off. We will hire, and this is part of the grant. So if we don't get the grant, we're not necessarily moving forward with this. We get the grant, we will hire a laborer. We will purchase an electric box truck, which we quoted for, in order to not, just in order to not have a climate footprint, carbon footprint on the driving around and getting it. And they will weekly pick up waste at each of those sites and bring them back here to be processed. And then the alternative technologies to landfill. This is the Global Energy Project. They've committed that 60 or 70% of our MSW will be diverted through this project. We are still in the due diligence process. I will say that it's looking like potentially the items 1 and 2 would be moved forward, but maybe not 3 and 4. Probably not the anaerobic digestion and the biogas, but that's still a conversation that we're having with the board. It is a much more costly, and I think, there's question on whether the renewable natural gas is helping or continuing to have fossil fuels as an option. So what those first 2, using Van Dyke technology, and they're in MRFs in a lot of places, we would have a mixed waste processing facility that would be built here and operated by them. We would send them our 100,000 tons of MSW. It would go through separation. They would bring 20% of the regulated recyclables out and sell them back into the market. The organics would be separated and put through thermal hydrolysis, and then that creates an organic fraction, which they will be responsible for finding a home for, which will either be composting or other anaerobic digesters. It is possible that we could choose to build a industrial sized composting facility for those 50,000 tons, and then they would pay us to accept that organic fraction.
Is this a new information? It says prepared for Mark Ryder. Is that new? Or is that part
This is
of
the same.
same?
Yeah.
This is not the same.
Well,
Before?
parts 3 and 4, this was their proposal. This that says prepared for Mark Ryder is their proposal. What I just explained to you is different because it involved the anaerobic digestion, but what Rebecca asked, which was kind of the cover page, the proposal is the only thing that we are working on, but back and forth with negotiations, we've talked about not having and that was actually part of the original proposal too, was the possibility of not having one anaerobic digestion. That was part of their original proposal. It just seems like that's the more feasible pathway that, as we're discussing with the board, it may seem that we go. And that would actually decrease our costs as opposed to the other options increasing.
Why, I've read through it, but I still don't understand why they would do, thermal hydrolysis if you're gonna compost. If they-
Because it does what the first 30 days of composting does in hours.
I think you're,
I have a question. I haven't heard anything about how much water will be used for thermal hydrolysis or what the condition of the water will be after it's used.
They recycle the water in the
Yeah.
system, so there is an initial, but a lot of their water gets recycled and put back through, so, but there is a wastewater treatment type facility that's part of their proposal as well.
Right, because it's essentially washing next.
But a lot of it becomes steam. It's not just wash, I mean, the steam then this,
This is the single stream process
Yeah.
that we're talking about.
well.
So there could be
it's-
radicals and all kinds of toxic elements in that mix that you're using thermal hydrolysis on.
That would
I
not
have
go. through hydrolysis.
I have a
It
point
would-
of order. I have a point of order.
Yes,
Yeah.
Donna?
Yeah, this is out of scope. This is a zero waste committee meeting. It's not the meeting about about that process.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fair. Let's continue moving. Mark giving a presentation on the priorities of what the agency is doing today, and we want to
Right.
continue the conversation moving forward. If we dive too deep into this right now, we're not going to give ourselves time to be able to get to the remainder of the agenda. I mean,
I do want to say that this is one of the main projects to get to zero waste. So I understand not wanting to go deep into that, but it is a method of going zero waste. It's not a source separation method to get to zero waste, which I know a lot of people favor, but it is a way of, after the scale, diverting materials that don't end up in a landfill or an incinerator, because thermal hydrolysis is a very different process than incineration. It is basically cleaning and polishing the organic fraction, which still exists. It doesn't disappear, which it might in incineration.
Right, so at some point though, we'll get more detail on that. There was a very good article in the paper
No.
that I saved too about, it said, do you have to wash your peanut butter jar? And it was all about these automated systems.
I mean, that's gonna happen no matter where you go. We prefer that you wash your peanut butter jar using our dual stream, very low tech staff sorted sortation, because that is when the peanut butter isn't washed out, that is where you become a vector for rodents.
Right. But
It's
this
about
was,
storage.
this article morphed into the thermal hydrolysis systems
Hmm.
that are coming online in a few cities. But it was a weird headline.
I would recommend if you find articles like that, please share it with folks.
Okay, I will. I saved it so I can share.
So our biggest challenge is public compliance with mandatory source separation of recyclables and other laws. A revenue model that incentivizes waste generation, not reduction or diversion. As I've said, it's hard for us to fund projects that divert before the scale because we rely on that volume in our projections in order to keep the lights on. Increasing disposal and transportation constitute a lack of landfill capacity and unpredictable or underdeveloped markets. I think I'm almost done. Stop.
Okay, thank you, Mark. So, I mean, I get that, high level overview of the agency's goals. We're planning it, we've got a waste stream, we need to manage both. We're only in control of certain things based on legislation and policy available today, but there's a lot and we still need to. So before we move on to the next section, does anyone have any questions for Mark around agency goals or objectives as it relates to the planning 36? Yes.
Just a clarifying question. So the work of the zero waste committee that we're a part of for a few months is to help the zero waste committee to make recommendations for a zero waste implementation plan. This isn't the zero waste implementation plan that would then be adopted into this solid waste management plan. So these are we're providing and doing some of that work that would help cut the costs for a zero waste implementation plan. Just to be clear,
You're adding a step. So I think these initiatives would be voted on by the board to go directly into the local solid waste. There is not
Okay.
necessarily a need if these zero waste initiatives are in the actual, what our constitution, what, our guiding document is. As long as these zero waste initiatives are in that local solid waste management plan, there isn't necessarily a need for a zero waste implementation.
And
Standalone.
the local solid waste management plan is produced by the agency, but the legislature has to approve that. So it goes through both of those areas and it becomes the plan for the next 10 years.
and how does the policy guidance document work within what you're trying to accomplish here?
I think the policy guidance document, which we'll present in September in committee, how the legislature to know what we've all done together and what potential new policies we can create. And that's why we created the Beyond Plastics Working Group to, I think, put together the brains who know some of the shifts that could be feasible. And so by November, we hope to introduce at least one new policy. And that policy could be, let's say, removing clamshell plastics and tinted plastics from the waste stream and banning them in restaurants. Then it changes their waste stream.
But could two more clarifying questions. So should the legislature be working in tandem with what the zero waste implementation plan would be, and just so that we're actually moving in the same direction, right? So whatever laws are needed to get to where you need to go, they're in sync. But also, what if there are gaps in what we present that a consultant would actually really be able to help us to tie together? How do we deal with that, since we're making recommendations based on initiatives?
Mhm.
But how do we know what might be missing if there isn't an expertise?
Well, I would say the agency does have a lot of expertise in the staff. And so, they're coming up with a lot of those ideas, but Mark's doing building that.
Yeah, so when we go out, which for an RFP for the local solid waste management plan, we will hire a consultant to create that document. We will have ideas that we bring to
So
them.
you are planning to do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And,
That's my
and,
question.
and
That's
it
good.
will be a requirement in
With
the
our
RFP that they have experience with zero.
So that was my question. If I wasn't clear, if we were providing advice or advising for a zero waste implementation plan, but that that UCRRA is intending to actually hire a consultant to help to draft that with all of the information that you're collecting now. Thanks.
Yes, Manna?
Just to take it a step further, I think it's important that we understand what is the goal, or come to the consensus of what is the goal of the Zero Waste Committee between now and the end of the year. And also, I just want to point out that the company that's doing the guidance document comes highly recommended from people in the field of zero waste. And I know that the agency is going to have to issue an independent RFP. You can't just, because the agency has hired MSW Consulting, you can't just automatically go with them. I expect,
They'll
you're
receive,
the lawyer.
they will receive the RFP.
Pardon?
They will be sent the RFP.
Right.
And I will say that one thing that Chris didn't mention is that, because Rebecca, you asked, shouldn't we be kind of working together? Chris and I, with the consultant, have been at every meeting. So they are working with,
But I just
it's
mean,
not in a
I mean,
vacuum.
no, I'm sorry if what I mean is that if the legislature can pass laws, how might that work? If they're gonna ban clamshells, that's great, but I'm just wondering how all of this is working together in that regard, not just your meetings, but what the plan will be to integrate the legislative efforts with, if the zero waste implementation plan is being developed here, which hasn't always been clear this year, then how might the legislature be a partner in assisting all of us to get to where we have to go, wherever they're in a position of authority to pass laws, is my question.
And they consult with the agency when they're doing the laws. I mean, so, Chris, as the chair of that committee, drafted a resolution, sent it to us. We recommended changes, and that's kind of how another reason that the Beyond Plastics Working Group came, because some of the materials that the legislature was looking to ban are actually highly recyclable, and it wasn't the right necessarily products. And so he acknowledged that, drew it back. It's now creating this.
But it sounds pretty clear to me right now that you're saying that UCRRA is going to be in the lead of the zero waste implementation plan.
The interim implementation plan, and then it'll end up.
Because the county, it wasn't clear to me. Now it's becoming clear to me that that's what's happening.
It will inform the solid waste management,
The zero waste implementation plan that will be adopted
the policy guidance stuff,
will inform
the solid waste, which will include zero waste implementation.
Both documents
That's right.
will inform the plan, and one is an interim document because it will take time for a consultant to get there. So that's what you were all.
as will this work.
And
That's what this work is the interim document.
This is the starting point, right? So at the end of this meeting in December, we already have 14 initiatives we started, and I can see that some consolidating, some continuing to build. And by December, I would like to have a very concise but specific set of initiatives that could be executable because we've thought through what needs to happen. Those will be feeding directly into the local solid waste management plans. The consultants will come in, get the guidance document, they'll get our recommendations, they'll do their work, and that should all be fed into that 10-year plan.
And so you'll be adopting this into the solid waste management plan in 2030,
Preferably
2029. So, but that's the ultimate time deadline.
That's
For all
the
of
latest that it can.
Okay,
And that'll be architecting what we're going to be doing until 2040
right. That's
to get to the 60%.
every 10 years. Yeah.
And if it's done well, we can request every 2 years, we can request a 2-year extension. And so it should be looking at 2040, but it should also be looking at there should be things in there that look at beyond 2040 because we're not choosing to do that on this one. Like we've never once asked the DEC to extend our current local solid. Every 2 years, we can ask for another 2 years. And we've chosen not to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I just also want to remind folks that when the last local solid waste management plan was passed, both by the board of the agency and the legislature, it was clearly noted that there was a deficit with regard to an implementation plan for waste diversion. There was a lot of language in the local solid waste management plan. You could do this and you might do that, but there wasn't an implementation plan that gave a timeline and costs and revenues, and just want to add that to the urgency of actually addressing this. And in terms of expertise, I just want to acknowledge that there's a lot of expertise right here at this table.
Yeah, I agree. And that's why I think the structure of these cards is very important. And we want to make them simple, executable, how much does it cost, when would it start, how long would it take, what policy might be required to make it happen, so that these are comprehensive and can be shared. Like, Chris and his, committee can pick up some of these things if they want, and we can continue talking about them. It's not like, a silo. We want to make it as collaborative as we can. So just one final point. Does anybody have any other questions for Mark on the goals before we move into the card review?
Well, the goals are great. In general, looking at the whole zero waste, projection functions there. I have to admit, I'm confused between the legislature and UCRRA, who's responsible for what and how, what the legislature decides. Sometimes UCRRA is supposed to enforce with this tiny staff that I looked at the equation and I haven't quite come to grips with it yet or felt, you know, at ease with it, that it has some rough spots that I, you know, so sometimes when I'm thinking of a program that might reduce waste, then I'm like, well, how could this possibly happen?
Yeah, how could
You
it be
know,
funded?
yes,
And I
that
think-
where am I grounded in reality in this project?
I mean,
That's
it's
what I'm looking for.
It's challenging, and I think that's why Chris is here, as well as Alexandria, as well as Mark, right? Because
Yeah.
we've got to think about how can these things be funded? Would the town fund it? Would UCRRA fund it? Would the legislature fund it? Or no one, in which case?
Or yes, how many grant writers are available who would join in on this if the idea was solved? You know, those are unknowns for me.
And I think we'll get into that as we start building the docs. It could be, you know, private companies that we recommend if we partner with to mitigate costs, things like that. So,
Can I add on to that?
yeah, absolutely.
I think that's why we wanted to change the language on the original zero waste implementation plan, which a lot of people in this room made progress on back 6 years ago or more. Manash, Rebecca, Mark. But implementation as a word isn't what the legislature does, what UCRRA does. So that's why we had to change the language. What we do is policy and funding. So we changed it to a policy guidance document to guide the legislature, to eliminate some of the confusion that exists. So when we have a policy guidance document, it allows the legislature to do their job better, and then it allows UCRRA to do their job. We're distinguishing.
Yeah.
I think the confusion is that the zero waste implementation plan would appear to then, a policy guidance document would make sense following the adoption of the zero waste implementation plan, because that's 30,000 foot view.
Yes.
I mean, the way I understand it anyway, and then it would be critical for the legislature to then dig into that and say, these are the pieces we need to, you know, to discuss, debate, dissent, pass laws,
Yes.
to move those things forward.
Yeah.
So is that your understanding of how it works?
Yeah. And then the fact that we now have not now, we've always had a healthy relationship, but we want to maintain a healthy relationship so that when they have a question for the legislature or we have a question for them, the door is open, the lines of communication are
Good.
open.
That's good.
Can I take 30 seconds to share a quick story that I think speaks to some of this? So when the Food Waste Prevention and Reduction Act was passed, I was in a very different role. I was Deputy County Executive overseeing the Health Department. Tim Rose, who is now in the Health Department, was the Executive Director here. The legislature was working on passing this law, had members of the executive staff in meetings, had the agency in meetings. And when the legislature passed that law, they said that the county executive will determine who the enforcing entity is. At the time, the UCRRA didn't want to enforce WAPR because they said we're receiving in the compost, which we receive MSW, so enforced flow control. My health department didn't want to be the enforcement arm because they said we don't have time. We're already doing like these state required permit enforcement actions, and we don't have the staff. And so it ended up that law is enforced by the Department of the Environment, who had at the time for most of the law has like 4 staff members. And so they do their best and they do a lot of education around it. Part of like when we were partnering with the county on the Climate Smart Communities Initiative grant, we were going to take over enforcement. I think we still will do that, even though they chose not to partner with us this year. If we get the grant, we will still hire a business advisor / compliance officer for food waste and take that on from the Department of the Environment. So some of the laws that you see aren't just chosen for UCRRA to enforce. There's other ones like the skip the straw law or the plastic bags law. You would think the agency enforces those. That's not the way the laws are written. And so now I think the relationship between the agency and the county is in a way that when laws like that are written, there will be open conversations and deliberation, and where it makes sense for the agency to enforce things, we will, where it makes sense for somebody else to enforce.
And if I may, before you enforce, it's critical to do the education, and I'll bring it up probably for the 73rd time. The idea of an expo, food waste expo, that does the education in a positive way, showcases the good examples that are working, and just and the haulers would be there, and it's how it worked when we were first introducing recycling, and it worked really well. I want us to get on next year's chamber agenda before they tell us it's too late again. Sorry if I keep bringing that up,
No,
but
it's okay.
I think it's important, and especially because the agency has lost food waste. And in order to make it more economical to process food waste, the agency has a stake in bringing more. And when we talk about that, I'd like to understand the impact that the city of Kingston will be doing. But right now, we're staying focused on goals.
Let's just do one more comment and then
Yeah,
move forward.
this is about the cards. I'm just wondering if it might be helpful to put enforcement as an item in these cards, because it's not something, it would be good to think about it. And which of the agents, whether it's the Department of Health here, whether it's UCRRA, who might it be, which would be a good education, actually, part of our thinking.
Yeah, it's a great idea. I mean, some of the cards may not require that, but if the ones that do,
Yeah.
and I mean,
It's like governor considerations,
yeah, absolutely.
it's sort of like.
It's
It's
the other end.
education.
It's the other
We
end.
have
again.
a sort of section for where we have doubts or questions or.
And I think it's okay if there's a very clear need for enforcement within the card. I mean, you can create another category. It's not fixed in stone. Like, let's think of it as wet clay. You can mold it where you need to based on the card. It's important.
Thank you. Mark, we talked a little earlier about volume and food waste. And I know this because I'm out there, I size up things like the public schools, all that stuff. And in most of the time, and they definitely have enough food waste that they should be complying. And most of the time they go, if no one's gonna force us, we're not gonna do it, we don't have the money.
Right.
So I'm just saying, and I even try to give them a little bit of a wash, like, look, you're gonna be taking this out of this, maybe you can have your other garbage picked up less, try to give them I'm saying nursing homes, the schools, all of them, I've been in.
Right.
And they're ripe for the picking, they're there to get. And they say point blank, that unless someone's forcing me, even some of them have gotten letters from the county saying that they should be complying. That's where I've been called in. But no one's following up. And I think that whole enforcement thing is going to help in so many areas
Yeah.
and with education.
And I want to, in the grant, we didn't call the person a wasted food compliance officer. We called them a wasted food business advisor, because it is about advising them. It's about letting them know that they fall or not within the current thresholds of the Food Waste Prevention Act. But also that shouldn't matter because there are other reasons to do it, some of which,
Right.
Can be actually beneficial in a fun financial way.
Yeah.
Because they can order less bins of their regular garbage, like you talked about. I will say, the law is imperfect in some ways, but also the data that the Department of the Environment has to get to enforce is state-run data. that tells them who comply. And schools, because they're not open 52 weeks out of the year, and the way the law is written requires half a ton a week over a 52-week period, a lot of the schools actually they don't meet the threshold. So,
And I think that's a great example of what policy can support, right? Because it's half a ton, but we think we could lower that.
To an average half ton, not like if I'm only open for 10 months a year, that's my average for each of those months. Yeah, but nursing homes, there's a lot of them. And, I know I've seen the food waste. I can eyeball almost and, do a quick calculation of how much they would have a week. And they're, they definitely have to be complying, but no one is holding their feet to the fire. And I know no one, there's no one available. I know it's not that you don't want to, just that there's no compliance.
There's no funding.
There's no funding, it's whatever.
one, we're not the enforcement.
No,
No, I'm looking at the time
Yep.
and today's objectives. Okay, why this meeting is structured the way it is with these objectives, because at the end of this, we're parked. So these ideas that we've all worked on can be parked at the end of this.
Well,
So let's do this.
do that. Yeah.
No, I don't want to discuss that. Let's get into this.
Yeah, 100%. We want to move to the next section. So appreciate all the conversation, but now let's move into the actual card discussion. Thanks, Shabazz, for keeping us on track. So what I wanted to do here is kind of go card by card, just let the owner of the card, the creator of it, give just a quick overview of what it is. And the point, the point is not to have a serious, in-depth debate about each card, right? This is just to create awareness of what's created already by the members of the community or committee. And then we can discuss, after we go through all of them, do two of them sound similar and we should merge them? Or does one sound like it's something that Mark and the agency are already working on based on what we saw earlier today? And if that's the case, that's where parking might become relevant, because we don't want to duplicate what the agency is already prioritizing and working on. Or, we would combine it in with them and help support that. So the idea is not to stop anything tonight. The idea is to continue building. And over the next meetings, we're just going to continue refining this until we get to a place where we've got a core set of cards that we as the group believe are right for Ulster County and have enough information in them to be executable, like I was describing, with collaboration or enforcement or education components into it. Then we will vote as the committee to submit them to the board for the local solid waste management plan. So with that, the idea is here just to go one by one and we'll start going through them. So we'll jump right in. The way that this is structured, so just to recap, we've got 17 areas that we identified as opportunity areas for zero waste, and you're not going to get all of them. The way that this little document is written, I put in the cards that have been submitted into each category, and if there was no submission, I just left it blank. When we get to the end, we'll come back and we'll say, are there areas that are blank that we think we should have cards in? And we can talk about who might want to create the card and get started on it. So just to dive into the first one, so organics and composting, obviously that's been a big topic tonight. And Mark described some of the work the agency is doing on organics. So the card that I created here called Countywide Organics Capture Network is to sort of build on these ideas that are already happening and think about other mechanisms or ways where we can do a better job of capturing organic waste that is possible in the community. I think for this card, policy is a key thing. So I'll be thinking about ways that we could recommend to the legislature to pass policy that would help require more separation of organics at the source, at people's homes or at nursing centers like we were describing. Food expo, that could be a great idea as well as an educational component. If we reduce the level, so more people have to source separate the organics, we should be giving them education and ways to learn how to do that better.
Is this 001? Zero branding, zero waste, is that you?
We're on 0801.
We're over here. Oh, they're on page 2.
Yeah, so So that's that card. So, and just so everyone knows, all these cards, we have a drive. And each card has the full set of sort of content in it. So I'm not gonna go any further into that now. If anybody wants to collaborate with me on that one, like the cards are available for everyone to read, we can all go in there together and work on it. I would also encourage, I mean, I know we meet once a month, but there's work that has to go into this. And so if 2 people, 3 people, 4 of us are passionate about one of these, like we can set up sort of separate time on the side, as long as we're not a quorum, to have discussion and sort of collaborate on building these cards out. So just another point. So that's the organics network one. It you know, it's a little bit similar to what Mark proposed, which what they're trying to get funded. So I don't want to duplicate any of that work, of course, within the card, but that's what I'll be focusing on there. The next one, Claudia, I'll pass it over to you to just give a quick overview.
Okay, I was looking at the, it's an annual bin sale, is it? Am I right there?
We do annual.
Okay, so I would up that to twice a year because fall is a really great opportunity to get people to compost all those leaves to use and all the pumpkins and it just, if you fill your bin in the fall, then it's ready in the spring. That's a kind of easy sell. And the aerator tool that we're offering isn't top notch. So I would look at all of the equipment in the demonstration area and try to use the most functional tools that I've had 30 years of experience with home composting, and I think I might be able to, you know, just offer my experience there, and that would be a nice conversation I'd like to have. So I also went on to hot box bins, which there's a woman in New York City, Paula Hewitt-Evren, who actually patented this rodent-proof box. And I used a 7-bin system and 2 3-bin systems. And they are no-turn bins. You fill them up and you let them sit for 6 or 8 weeks, and then you turn them into a curing bin. And we had a fabulous community garden built on a rubble site using these bins. And then I also used bioremediated the soil on a bulldozed park site and made a garden there. So I know they work and they are expensive to build, but they're a great model to show people who want to collect organic material at larger scale.
Is it just a question for me on hot boxes? Is this something that a individual like my family would have in house, or is it more for like a nursing home size patient or anything?
They're ideal at schools for science study, and they are great for parks and community gardens. And yes, if you have a big enough family at home, you could use it at home. And I am hoping to build one this summer. It's on my list to put up a demo in my house because I'm using one of the square black bins and it's fine, but I'd like a lot more material. So I would even collect from my neighbors if I could.
Can I ask you a question? Is that similar to what's at New Paltz Community Gardens?
No, that's an open bin. This one is completely sealed with pipes bringing the air in, and you can even make the top.
Is that like a dumpster similar to that? Using like a container, like a containerized system where you just put in the pipes and it aerates?
Actually, on the card, I put a link to
Okay.
the website. So you can see it. They're built out of Trex lumber, which rats don't like to chew on. And the pipes bring in air are capped so they can't crawl in, and the lids are tight. And they're very effective. So I just want to share that experience, however long it takes to get that. I'd love to see a few of those around. And then, of course, the pumpkin smash was another success I had in the because it's a very large load of heavy material. And it's better to collect it than have it put in the trash.
What was the collection process like?
They brought the pumpkins to the park.
Okay.
And then the kids smashed them up and we put them in these fabulous hot box bins.
Who ran it?
I did.
The government.
With students and volunteers. My whole site was students and volunteers, there's education.
Some waste agencies have similar type, or they do like the slingshot type.
Yeah.
Smash.
Like,
You're basically, yeah, you're shooting them out of, I mean, I've seen those done elsewhere.
Do we have anything like that in Ulster County or any towns?
There's been like back in the day, not Bird's Farm, Gill's Farm used to do the cannons, pumpkin cannons. But I asked who ran it because if it became regular annual event, people would start to become used to bringing their pumpkins to the event. And it reminds me of a book, Surviving the Future, Culture, Carnival, and Capital in the Aftermath of the Market Economy. And it talks about how carnival is very important to our economy. And when we celebrate pie eating contests or destroying pumpkins, we tend not to put it into the market and sell those pumpkins and try to make more money for our community. Instead, we celebrate the destruction and the compost of it. So, I mean, it's fun.
it is a fun.
Macy, thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, a little confusing. This is the first time we're going through this. Shabazz and Josephine have been working on composting for more than 30 years that I know of. And I appreciate that Claudia took this initiative, but how do we address the bigger picture? There's a section on education. If it's about
It doesn't have to be
organic,
perfect. I think some of them are going to overlap, Nana. So like when I think a lot of what he's talking about in the New Cult Center, like it overlaps with organics. And when you get into the card, I tried to give a section to show what is the main category, and you just kind of have to guess what is main, but you can say what it's connected to. It doesn't need to be a perfect system. But we wanted to try and create just some structure, but like what Shabazz might recommend, might in a couple areas. Does that make sense?
it does, but
Okay, then on my card, I put Shabazz in because Shabazz is,
that's,
no, but
I get it.
you're saying he already has an existing, hub and spoke,
I'm thinking of it from the perspective of the legislature who has to make policy, and it feels to me like it kind of bounces around, and I don't think we can just give them 20 cards. There's, and that's one thing I think that the table of contents version, it was fairly well organized. This is, as it occurred to you, and that's fine. But I just want to, I feel very strongly that I want to work on composting education, and I'm not sure how to
That's right.
do that
Yeah,
with the cards.
I'm happy we can continue talking about this sort of offline. I don't want to disrupt this, but I think we can maybe also think of ways to recategorize or restructure the document so that it makes more sense. I'm happy to work with you directly on that if that would be helpful.
Yes, thank you.
Let's do that.
Because the end outcome will be a document, I think.
Yeah.
Chris will take all.
We're not just going to give them 20.
No,
We're not gonna give them 20 cards. I think
No.
it was spoken early on.
The idea is
It's a starting point.
this is completely a starting point. And as we mature these ideas over time, it's gonna consolidate into the right areas. And then my job at the end of it is to consolidate all that into one packet, one document. It's not just gonna be 20 initiatives.
Thank
like that. Okay, Shabazz, let's please hear from you about the hub and spoke.
When we originally, going back to when we originally developed part of the ROC, the implementation plan, we saw the implementation plan as a more active than, and what we found was what we thought about was developing a model. And at that time, we didn't have an idea of where it would be. So a lot of time was spent on how we would identify a volunteer and, how we would support them. But over the years, what has happened is the town of New Paltz has really stepped forward, and as have many other communities with the effort to manage their waste, and then the effort also to be in compliance with the regulations. So so now the town of New Paltz has basically everything that's needed to be this demonstration site. And we, with our project in Hurley, what we did was we developed a system of analyzing these transfer stations. And that analysis of Hurley is what is our start point. We call it a baseline with analyzing the town of New Paltz. Now, we've had a few meetings with the village and the transfer station operator. And, you know, coming from this meeting, we're hoping to push this forward. And what we want to do is first do an analysis of the town's transfer station. And the town has a fairly sophisticated transfer station. They have employees, they have 3 employees, and they have all of the equipment, so forth. And they have this new compost system, you know, an O2 system that is very underutilized. So the overview of the idea is to look at the tourist industry. And the tourist industry now is the largest industry in Ulster County. You know, it's got to be bigger than the apple. So if we were to do a pilot program, and this is basically what we discussed in the logistics of doing this, get some of the food waste producing companies there on Main Street through New Paltz, get some volunteers. And well, first we would do the baseline. So, you know, how many restaurants, what is going to be a meaningful sample of these restaurants, and then get volunteers to do that. And then the town would pick up the material from these volunteers. So let's just say we decide that a sample is 10%, right? So I don't know how many would be in the group, but if we decide that 10%, then we would maybe we would decide that 5%, or maybe it would be 15%. But it would have to be a number that we all agree is going to be significant, and it's going to give us data that can't be challenged. That's the way we put it. So we believe that the bits and pieces of that are already in place. So the cost of doing that is very, very low. And what we're asking for is to take some of the hours that you have, that the agency has for their technical assistance, and have them chime in on developing the baseline. And then we would develop the audit. And that way, like there's a third party connection to the whole thing. And it won't be like just a, because right now, everything is ad hoc. You know, Kingston is doing something, Hurley's doing something, and no one knows. You know, there's no place where you can go where you can see what everyone is doing and what they're planning to do and what they have done. So, I think that, the town of New Paltz has made a tremendous investment in that place over the years. You know, kind of thanks to Laura Petit. But the person that came after her continued to make, they have new trucks, they have, you know, a real desire to fill their capacity.
And does the town pay for that transfer service of the local organics to the transfer station in New Paltz?
No,
So that would be done right now by volunteers or are you?
well, it's done by volunteers, but the concept of bringing in the tourist industry to support it is to, you know, get this data from the pilot project. And then, it's kind of like town, village policy to have one carting company, you know, instead of having 5 different carting companies come into the town. What they did was they put out a bid, and now they have one carting company that comes in and services the town. And they would do the same thing with the commercial facilities. So we would tie the commercial, which is now going to the landfill, into the local composting capacity. And it would make it cost effective because there would be a pool of people, of businesses that would sign into this. And instead of a company, because right now, if you want, we were at main course. We're at main course with some entirely different, talking to people there. And they said, we tried it and it didn't work. We had rats, we had maggots, we had everything. We got rid of it. Right. And you could see that it was not structured. The service was not structured for a commercial operation of that size, you know. So if you went into it like that, then the companies would be able to pool their resources, take advantage of local capacity, and then get the service that they need. And I think that once we had those numbers, we could look at and apply that to all of our transfer stations.
The idea, just so I can sort of recap where you're going, is to try to find methods using New Paltz as the pilot of pulling organics to the MRDC. And if
Well, see, with New Paltz though, it's not just organics; it's everything. So what New Paltz has done, you know, is they have reduced the amount of waste that they're sending to the transfer station, to the landfill, to 186 tons per year. And just to you know, put it in perspective, the town of Hurley sends about 600 tons per year. So you know, when we set a goal for the town of Hurley, we said we're going to try to reduce it to 300 tons per year, but they have gone 2 steps further than that. So now when you use them as a model, what they would be the spoke of this hub and spoke system. Right. And with that, you would be able to look at zero waste, because, you know, when Laura was there, we used to go back and forth, and you know, we were hitting 70%, and she said she was hitting 85%. And when you start to look at her numbers, you know, I never took the time. I would do it, you know, just to see how they do. You know, but I believe that it should be done by a third party.
You go, right?
Mark, you go ahead.
Just so everybody has like the baseline of where New Paltz was, in 2017, New Paltz had 302 tons. Yeah. There are a few things, well, I won't. Us being right next door helps them in some ways. Hurley has a very different, like, you have to pass our facility in order to go to the New Paltz transfer station. So some of the things that they've done, I'm not saying it's not a good model, but some of it is also.
That's what,
2,500 members or whatever that's called with registered users where Hurley has like 15. You know, I mean, the difference in the MSW per household, I guess, who's using that. So I think it's worth studying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
Can they be both? In other words, it seems to me that the communities are different enough that it makes sense to have two pilots.
no. No, we would just do one. We would do one because everything is there. And then we would have the model for other places. So because we have the contract with Hurley, we can utilize this information. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Right, so if I had the information, say, on their reuse center, which they go through grants, right? I could utilize that information and put the same thing in Hurley without starting from scratch.
And then move that out to the other transfer stations,
So
to the other MRD.
Well, you know, what we want to know is what works.
Yeah.
Right, and that's our start point. So here we have something that works.
also, Mayor Alex is willing to, with the village, get that coordination of the, and I thought that was interesting, you know, of the, it's untapped food waste. No one's
Right.
collecting that food waste from them. It's going right into the landfill. So, she has access to volunteers, and she's very willing to get that going too. So it's kind of the perfect storm to make a good study.
Yeah.
That's a,
I mean, I think it's a great idea, and I think in the spirit of time, let's just continue moving on, but
Yep.
I think continue building out
Thank
this idea and see exactly right format for discussion. We'll just continue. If you want to make one, yeah.
Well, I have a question about numbers. So I was just thinking about the 30, 60, 90. And then what I see is that you're composting 5,000 tons a year. You can 2,500, but you can compost up to 10,000 tons per year. You can.
We have the capability
That's what I mean. It's
operationally,
not
but
permits.
not permit.
I got it. But that's
7,500 is our permit, but we believe that we can do 10,000.
right. So my question with that is that has UCRRA thought about what its actual capacity could be countywide? In other words, it feels like there's a little bit of a gap in my understanding of what the ultimate potential is for, say, organics, for the reuse center, et cetera, as it stands with maybe it's the transfer stations, but what else is there to see what actually the county's potential is? Because what I heard you say earlier is that global would help you get to zero waste. So now I'm wondering, well, we're looking at, even in the cards that I was just looking in, Chris, the card that you have states, well, now I'm looking at Shabaz's, but I think it's, sorry, it's not in front of me, but it's a small number. So it looks like we're talking just about what this facility can do. And so to help us to put this into perspective, it would be good to understand what the town
Addressable amount. I
can
mean,
do,
so
which could change, could change your strategies dramatically.
Well, there's 24,000 tons of food waste in
based on Stony Brook studies year after year. So what we need to do to get, let's say 100% of that, which is the county executive's executive order 1 and a goal. If we have the capacity of 10,000, community compost has a capacity, green waste has a capacity, and if we then have the town transfer station, some of them have not only collection but processing capabilities on site, we believe we can get to that.
But I wonder, I don't know where this is, but rather than believing what we can do, right? If part of the thinking for a plan is to also examine what the potential is, which is a clue, what Shabazz is saying is a clue to my thinking of, oh, I'm not sure what the maximum, what can we actually achieve in the county? Because I don't know what that number is.
Do you mean in terms of tons of compost that we could potentially produce?
That's one arm of the octopus, because what Shabazz is saying, what you all are doing with the reuse cent, you know that there are lots of things to recover. One of them is organic. So what is the potential in the county? Are we talking about 100,000 tons?
No,
90,000, I'm just saying.
well, but if the food waste generated, right, that's in our waste, on top of the source separated food waste that's already being collected, that's all we can. I mean, unless you're talking about importing food waste, we wouldn't build a system. There's 24,000 tons in our MSW that comes here that needs to be separated out, either before the scale, source separated, and then there's another 7,000 to 8,000 tons of food waste that is collected by us, by greenways, by community compost, by the New Paltz transfer station.
But I guess that's the wrong, I'm sorry, I'm trying to find the question is not just what we're producing, but what do we have the potential for? What is our potential in the county for each arm of these octopuses? Is not what I'm really clear on.
Sure. But aside from what's generated, to me, it seems the gap is holding the material and transporting it. That UCRRA doesn't move material.
It does.
Do you go pick up food waste?
Not food waste.
No. So how the food material gets to
It gets
its destination once it's collected?
most of the food waste is commercial.
Yes.
And commercial contracts.
Yeah.
So we get all of our food waste from commercial haulers,
And
right? So
are they limited or we have enough of them?
No.
The commercial haulers?
we will,
We will.
we will.
That's
And we
something
don't.
we
And the demand,
The other stick point is holding the material for the carter to come pick it up. So if your person you talked to said they had rat and maggot issues, was that where?
that
problem
was
occurred?
a faulty design.
Was that at the holding point or was that at?
That was at the point of
process?
generation.
Yeah, but that's a bad design, Claudia. That's like when we designed.
So, cause I tried taking waste from a restaurant for my home compost system because I wanted more material. And I had to go pick it up every day.
I was just gonna say, when
Right.
we designed for that kind of commercial, we designed, our colleges, businesses, 6 days a week. They have
So you have to
pick
have
up.
carters running
You have
every
a
day.
carter running 6 days a week. You have to, or you're gonna end
Yeah.
up with what you said. It's not manageable. And the neighbors.
So that's a budget
Complaint.
item to look at is how people can pool their materials. So maybe the truck makes fewer stops.
So what it comes down to is an efficient route.
Yes, an
So
efficient.
we have developed an efficient route and we know how to develop. And when you look at an efficient route is based on concentration. So now you look at the village of New Paltz. And you have there the makings of an efficient route if everyone pools so that whoever responds to this bid that would be put out by the municipality would get all of the food waste producers,
Thank you.
right? And there, when you have that, you can get that collection.
Yeah.
SUNY New Paltz is a superb example.
In the spirit of time,
SUNY's already,
Yeah, we have
we already have,
What's that?
you said SUNY?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're already separating their food waste and,
No, I said they were an excellent example.
oh,
in the spirit of time, everyone, just because.
Lamella is the Lord, yes, and we need to work on it.
Organics and hub and spoke is obviously very, again, perhaps, and we can discuss this at the end, but when we think about our next meeting in September, maybe we make that a very big focus of the conversation. I mean, it's been a
Yes.
conversation tonight, but I just move this forward. So then the next section was 085, construction and demolition materials. Shabazz, you also have created a card around this one. Do you want to talk about that one?
Well, that also ties into with the hub and spoke.
Yep.
Right, and New Paltz has a, pretty extensive separation of those materials. And there's a graduated cost associated with what can be recovered and what has to be disposed of. So that's at the heart of it. And then the transfer stations would be the spokes for this. And each one would, we would take a look at how much is recovered from the different aspects of it and be able to recommend that. But basically that separated material would come to the hub for processing. And if that's the agency, and it's looked like you're putting the infrastructure for that, now because one of the things that we did, one of the projects that we did was we're part of the team that dismantled the psych center over across the river. And we worked on that for 5 years. That's one of the biggest recovery, demolition recovery in the country. And it was 53 buildings. So we have a really good understanding of what could be done. The idea of putting it, making it a requirement. What allows you to do that is having the infrastructure. So basically you're already installing the infrastructure. And so now it's a matter of education and then the permitting. But the waste is generated, unless you just knock the building down, right? Which the permitting is going to stop that, right? But the waste is generated separately.
Yep.
And so that, if there's a financial incentive, people will do it.
So this one ties, it's the same kind of concept of using the hub and spoke.
Yeah.
MRDC. So let's continue this one, if that's okay. In the next conversation, we can really think about what's the right decentralized method of doing that. My next one on textiles is very similar. Mike Baden, one of our board members, was describing a program in Rochester, I believe it is, at their transfer station, where it's like a second Saturday or something like that, where people can go and donate clothing to a bin, and then other people can come and get it. It's like giving your clothes to people in your community, and that's really great. So the idea here is how can we take that idea and expand it to all the MRDCs, create the right type of community engagement effort to make people aware of this as an opportunity, and people can come and get free clothing if they need it and struggling. And personally, I think that's a really great idea versus putting it in a box where you don't know where it's going to go. Obviously, the clothing box here goes to children in cost, but a lot of them don't. So how can we figure out a better way to use the MRDCs as an expansion to that idea? So that's the textiles one. Moving on, so getting into the plastics.
Is that called Reju Textile Regeneration Hub in Rochester?
It's in the town of Rochester.
Oh, town of Rochester.
Yeah, reuse is something completely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just curious. I would like to see that.
Yeah, Mike was going to connect me to the town, the team that manages that. So I was going to connect with them. Hopefully I can do that between the next meeting.
We've always had a really good Tioli shed where it's like part of the community every weekend where people come and bring things, take things, spend time and talk to each other. Yeah, I think the textiles is the next step.
Okay, thank you.
So then moving into plastics, and obviously, this is a key area of interest for Rebecca. We've got the Beyond Plastic partnership with the legislature, but there were two areas, Rebecca, that you had.
So I did not identify these two areas.
Okay.
I'm not sure who did. I know, and I'm not even, yeah,
Your
but,
name got put on.
but I would like to, think about this a little more if it's okay.
Of course.
Rather than to get into it, because we can do these, but there might be higher
Yep.
priorities to offer, to share. So, I started these anyway, but I don't think I selected those.
Okay,
I don't know why, but it's fine.
that's fine. They're in the folder. We can just, if you want to.
I think they're good
We
ones. I
can, yeah.
think they're good ones, but I think there might be better ones. But I just need a little time.
Yeah, I think I know what's that. So in that Excel sheet, I had given some examples. There were just ideas that I randomly had, and I think maybe you put your name against it, or I did.
Plastics is fine. I'm happy to look at that, and the working group has brought Judith in. You've heard of it.
And the grid that you've created is like
Amazing.
some of those can just feed right in.
Exactly. And they're not prioritized, because the group should do that, but Judith has certainly provided priorities which we could look at. So a little more time, but these, we could do them all.
I was gonna ask,
If
do we
it's
still
helpful.
have time to submit a card?
Of course, yeah.
I didn't get a chance.
Yeah. I mean, we have until November.
I'll
To
probably
continue.
do something in this section based on Beyond Plastics.
That is cool. Another point.
Oh, I was just thinking through a little bit about, no, I'll see it.
So then moving on, so Amanda, I know you had started a card on scrap metal. Is that right?
Yes.
Just want to give a quick overview. Yeah.
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind is that scrap metal is being collected at the towns, and also there's scrap metal dealers all over within the county, and because it's not flow control, it can move out of the county. When I was working on scrap metal, it occurred to me that the C&D used to be collected separately, and I think when we go back another pass to understand what happened so that C&D is now just MSW, and I know it had to do with registration and hauling, and I don't want to get into that now. But the big thing that came to mind, because I went back and read what had already been done, is we need to define what is meant by durable materials. There are a lot of things that could come under that category. And so in the card, I asked that question. So I don't have, but one thing that the agency could be helpful is providing a list of the dealers, because one of the partnerships should be with the scrap metal dealers. And I wonder if the agency has a relatively easy way of identifying who, at least in Ulster County, are the scrap metal dealers. I kind of feel like with scrap metal, it's a system that's not broken. It might be able to be improved, but because the metal has value, there has been a system in place that is working. That's a quick summary of.
And we, through our annual recycling report, a generator, like a scrap metal place, reports to us. So like West Kingston Recycling, for instance, they send us an annual report. So we do have the ability to connect with them, and anything that comes to the transfer station floor that we're able to divert off the transfer station floor, even though it's coming in with C&D and MSW, we are separating that, putting it in a box and taking it to West Kingston.
And taking where?
West Kingston Recycling.
Okay, so the agency has an outlet for the scrap metal.
That we receive in as garbage. We divert it out.
Most
We don't recover all of it, but
the transfer stations
do that.
go directly to, mostly to West Kingston.
They have boxes that are separate and they handle that through their DPW.
Oh, and
Highways Department.
I'm sorry. The other thing that it's brought up is freon or removal of greenhouse gas refrigerants. So that's another aspect of, this issue. How is it being handled? Is it being handled effectively? Because it's pretty important in terms of greenhouse gas. And there are more and more, now that we're using heat pumps and so forth, there are more appliances that are using freon or substitutes for freon, some of which are worse and some of which are better.
Thank you, Matt.
With heat pumps, some of the, you said Freon is summer. I don't know what it's, are heat pumps using Freon?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
they are.
Yeah, they are.
In that spirit of time, let's just move over to education and public education sharing. So Claudia, you had created new cards. It's the zero waste route.
Oh, yeah. I just thought it'd be nice to put a dollar sign in waste because that would convey that, it has economic value we can recover, that we should watch, our budget since everybody seems to be struggling a little, would be a good repeat. And then, oh yeah, the, educational material on composting. I just, would like to add that chopping and mixing accelerates the process and that aeration is really important in our bins. That I didn't see that emphasized in the program here. There are a lot of other great things, but I think those would be good additions. So it's pretty simple.
Mm-hmm.
And then, oh, you did get to my map, so.
That looks great.
Well, yeah, I like a visual representation of the relationship of things. For me, that's a lot easier than a bunch of words.
Yeah,
It's
works
great,
out for
yeah.
us. Having some big-
So I did a couple as examples. Which,
It's a good way to educate as well to the community who thinks of trash as their trash can. And I think visuals like that out on social media and places like that will help elevate people's understanding of how all this waste that they create gets mitigated and source separated.
yeah, it's kind of a shortcut. People can quickly get an idea.
So then moving on, so Rebecca, leachate and drinking water.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know why I'm on the agenda again, because I told you I wasn't quite ready,
That's
but
fine.
I mean, no, that's fine. It's just I'm not ready to I'm not even sure how this actually fits in, except that the idea of closing landfills and to produce less leachate, which all of yours are inactive anyway. I mean, it just seems like a separate item, but we should stop sending leachate to sewage treatment plants, which means there's no alternative for you, which means that there would have to be a meeting called with the state commissioner, the DEC, to say, we're in the midst of a rule, but we don't want to keep sending leachate into the Hudson River, period. What do we do? This happened a year ago with Hurley. They tried. The city disconnected that stream of pollution. The city brought the state in that did some testing. They were under the limits and told them to continue, similar to what the engineering firm told UCRRA. So, but we know that there's more chemicals in there than what we're actually required to treat and regulate, or rather to monitor. Well, there's 21,000 PFAS,
Right.
For example. So it would be, this is separate, but a great thing for the county to do, to say, we're not polluting the river anymore where people are drinking from. But that may not fit into the zero waste.
Oh, that's fair. Donna, I see your hand raised?
Yeah, no, point of order, that's out of scope for the Zero Waste Committee. I'm sorry.
That does bring us though to the end of the cards that have been submitted thus far. So thank you, everybody, for doing the
Yeah, thank you.
pre-work.
Great job, Chris. Thank you.
I think this, to close out on the conversation, so I think like, so this is the idea, like, you've got these cards, let's keep refining them to our next meeting. The hub and spoke will be on the agenda for the next time, as well as any sort of updates to the cards or new cards that have been added. So you can all see on the sheet, like, there are some blank areas, like, you know, tires or haulers and curbside collections and things. So if you have other ideas, start putting them in. You know, I know, Chris, you're gonna have some things. And so I think, you know, we'll, in our next session, we'll focus on hub and spoke and better ideas there. And then we'll need to think about how we can start turning these into more final products. And, you know, we're not going to have time to do thorough reviews of each card, I don't think, in every meeting. So we'll discuss what the right approach is to finalizing examples potentially in the next meeting. But, you know, feel free to keep communicating with me. I know you are in between meetings of when you have ideas or things you would like to introduce. Please continue doing that. It's been great.
If we have ideas, but we don't own the card, can we
Of
put
course.
those,
Yeah, well,
just, how do we handle that?
I think, I mean, we all can communicate to each other. So if you believe like Shabazzi's card with the audit or the pilot idea, and if also something you're interested in, just send an email, right? Just ask for a phone call and you guys can connect and talk about it. And then like ownership is, I don't like that idea, right? I think it's collaboration. Like one person wrote the card, but we can all feed into it. So if you have ideas like, you know, don't just erase what somebody wrote, rewrite it, but, you know, put a comment, put your comments in red or something like that, so we can all see how the cards are evolving. But yeah, feel free to collaborate amongst yourselves in between the meetings.
And what about if there is no owner and you just want to make a note under the topic without taking responsibility?
Yeah. You know, put some bullet points, maybe create the card, but yeah. Also, it doesn't, like, you know, if you have an idea, it's not fully thought through, like, that's fine too. Right? But anyway, we've reached the end of the agenda. We'll look forward to the next meeting and sort of continuing this conversation, but I appreciate everybody's time. Thank you, Mark, for the presentation. So let's mark the next step. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor? Aye. All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, so do you think it's, what is the status of the technical